So what does congruency look like? Well, congruency, to be congruent means to be lined up. I like this word. I hope it's not just because it's a big word, but to be lined up where things come into focus. They might have been out of focus, but now they're in focus. Congruency is when it's together, it's aligned, it's where it should be. Congruency is what I desire concerning God's heart. To be able to see the world the way He sees it. A silly illustration of this is to imagine God waking up in the morning and getting some coffee and looking out at His world, and what is it that He sees? What is it that He thinks? What is it that He feels? Does that interest me at all? Or am I too self-contained, or can I say it, too self-centered, to consider what it is that He sees, to consider what the world really does look like? Congruency. I think that's our call. I think that's what it means to be a disciple. I think that's where this goes. I think more than trying to decide whether, should I serve in another context, in a different culture, it just simply means, am I in a place where I can see anything, where I can be aligned, where I can have that kind of sight? Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. That's from Ephesians, but it's also well said, gaining congruency. When we think about that in terms of what the world does look like and what is around us, in particular, culturally speaking, and more particularly in terms of the nations of the earth, the fact is that there's a lot to be seen right here where we are, wherever that might be for you, but even for me in Joplin, Missouri, of all places, hardly the cosmopolitan center of the world, but nonetheless, I look around and I see things. I see things that maybe I didn't see before. I see Saudi Arabians sitting in Starbucks right next to me. I see people standing in line at Walmart holding cantaloupes, and I ask the guy where he is from. He tells me he's from Chennai, India, where I said, oh, I visited there. To see the nations that are right here in front of us. This is the task, I think, of the church, and it comes with congruency of aligning our eyes with God's eyes. One of the greatest places you see that right now in American culture, in the American context, is in terms of international students. I want to put some practical things on the end of these lessons here concerning how I can engage with God's heart for the nations, what that could look like. And I think one of the greatest ways you can do that, one of the greatest opportunities that has come our way in a long, long time, is the arrival of 876,000 international students on our shore this last year. The number has continued to grow over the last several years. Most think it will hit 1 million before too long. International students in our universities. This is just international students studying in a college setting. And of these international students, many of them come from China. Many of them come from China. Many of them come from Saudi Arabia. Many of them come from Japan. Others come from, of all places, Iran. Lots of places. And here they are, walking our streets, buying things at Walmart, studying in our universities by invitation from our universities themselves, and seeing what it's like to be in America and what it's like to be an American. 876,000 of them just last year. You look at that, you go, wow, that's pretty cool. That must mean a lot of them get to visit with American Christians and have opportunities to see inside American homes. I like to say that was true, but I can't. In fact, the statistic right now is 75%. 75% of international students who come to study in the United States never see the inside of an American home. Never sit at your mom's dinner table, never sit, well, I shouldn't say that about your mom. Maybe your mom's great that way, but never sit in a typical setting around a table sharing an American home. 75%, 80% never see the inside of an American church. Now that seems crazy to me. In fact, that seems just ridiculous. I don't understand that. I hope, you know, in your situation, God's opened your eyes to see international students standing around literally asking for help. I could show you videos of international students who have come to the United States and said the one thing they want more than anything else is to meet Americans in their own context, in their own setting. Someone that can answer their questions about what life is like here and what that looks like. And in some churches, they are coming alive to this and recognizing that. I used to think, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could see a team of missionaries go to some closed country and then that doesn't become possible because of visa impossibilities and a lot of other reasons. And at the same time, people from that country end up on a campus literally across the street from the church where I attend, literally across the street. The opportunities to engage, the opportunities to show friendship, the opportunities to be relational. You do know that the gospel only crosses a relational bridge. It has no other way of getting into someone's heart except as they see it lived out in someone else. Another interesting aspect of this is the meaning of the term in the New Testament, and I want to tie these two thoughts together. The meaning of the term in the New Testament of hospitality. Now, we all know about hospitality and what that looks like. For me, that means I get to run the vacuum cleaner. For me, that means rushing around a lot of times getting the house ready so that guests can come over. And hospitality in those terms is great. You know, in the local church, a lot of times it means a home group is coming to our house, a family gathering of some kind is taking place, people are coming over. Hospitality is seen in the New Testament. I think you may know that there are a number of commands concerning hospitality in the New Testament, like in Romans 12:13, where it says, practice hospitality. I have to practice it to get good at it. Where in 1 Peter 4:9, it says, offer hospitality without grumbling. It's funny he would say that. Well, I thought it was funny. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and a parallel text of Titus chapter 1. These both have to do with the elders, where it says directly that the elder must be hospitable. It doesn't mince words. It simply speaks of the necessity of hospitality. And we go, yeah, of course, you know, we want to have people over, and no, I do grumble sometimes about it. I know I shouldn't, but nonetheless I do. But of course, hospitality is something that any Christian should probably want to have, and some people are good at it, and some people say, I have the gift of hospitality because we have a lot of people over. The difficulty is what the word actually means. In the original text, the word hospitality comes from a word that is a combination of two words, philoxenia. This is the word for love, phileo, and this is the word for stranger. But actually, we've changed the translation of that sometimes. It actually means foreigner. The very word in the New Testament for hospitality means one who loves foreigners, one who is attentive to foreigners, one who pays attention, and I can use Old Testament language here, to the alien who is among you. The Old Testament speaks of this on many, many different occasions. God says to His people, pay attention to the alien who is among you. Pay attention to the widow. Pay attention to the orphan, the people of greatest need. pay attention to them, I think especially to the foreigner, and the very definition of the word hospitality having to do with having eyes to see the one who is from another country, from another culture, who is asking for help, or maybe they're not asking, but we readily acknowledge their presence. I would challenge you to think about what that could look like in your particular setting. How can we show philoxenia to the foreigners who are among us? Now, I mentioned earlier, Joplin, Missouri is hardly the center of the international universe, but Trish Udell, who works with international students in our particular context, tells me that there are 72 documented distinct foreign cultures in Joplin alone. 72 nations, a better way to say it, 72 nations represented in Joplin. And it's not until you start opening your eyes to this that you even see it. Oh, I know you can see people speaking Spanish and things like that, or you can readily acknowledge different nationalities, but that many in a place like Joplin? How many are there in Los Angeles? How many are there in Denver? And this is to say nothing about the immigrant population that is among you, be it legal or illegal. What do we see when we see people from other cultures? How do we think of them? What is important to us? And why do we think what we think? You know the story of Jonah and how Jonah was called by God to go to Nineveh. Nineveh, of course, was the capital of the ancient empire of Assyria. Assyria was not a nice place in those days, and the Ninevites were not nice people, just to put it bluntly, in terms of their conquests and the things that they did militarily. And still God called his prophet, go there, and I have a mission for you. And you know the story about Jonah. And unfortunately, perhaps unfortunately is the wrong word, but unfortunately, in a sense, we look at that story and think of it in terms of the fish and the miracle and all that went with that, and that's important and good. But most of the writing in Jonah is about Jonah's heart and about his inability to see God caring about anybody except somebody that was exactly like him. The inability to see anyone as an object of God's love that was not exactly like him. We have a word for that. I used it earlier, but the word is ethnocentric. And it's connected to the ethne that we've talked about, the nations. Ethnocentric is quite simply, here I am, this is my world, and I'm at the middle of it. I'm the center of importance. I'm the way I do things, the way I think, the way I talk, the things that matter to me, the people that matter to me is really all that matters. I am ethnocentric. And sometimes we recognize this in ourselves and we go, oh, I shouldn't be that way. Ethnocentricity is a difficult thing to overcome. It's kind of a survival process or reflex almost of I take care of myself and that way I survive. And here's where it gets really interesting. I think that, now let me redraw that circle. Ethnocentricity works like this, comes down to the center, and guess who's there? Little old me. Little old me, because everything about my life and my world centers around me. What happens when Christ comes into a life? As the Father has sent me, so send I you. That whole cycle is reversed. And instead of thinking ethnocentrically, instead of being someone who's only concerned with myself, I submit to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, and as a result, a centrifugal force comes into my life that sends me out and away from myself. Not because I don't matter, but because I matter so much that He gave His life for me. And now what does He do? He creates inside of me this incredible power, this incredible thing that happens that I start seeing things I'd never seen before. I start thinking about things I never thought before. I start imagining something beyond my own little world, beyond my own little sphere, beyond my own little ethnocentricity. And this is what he does. This is what he does with his church. This is what he does with his disciples. This is what he does with us. And when he does this, we start to gain congruency. Congruency. Lord, cut out of my heart, cut out of myself a heart of stone and replace it with a heart of flesh. That's from Ezekiel. Ask him to give you eyes that can see. Ask him for his heart. Ask him for the things that matter to him. Ask him. Ask him for congruency.